Hey guys, how's it going? I woke up this morning thinking about some other aspects of being an expat that I wanted to share with you today. And basically what I want to share is that you don't know what you don't know, nobody knows that you don't know it, and you don't even know that you need to know it. And that is something that has followed me around for the last 6 years as being an expat. And if you decide to become an expat, or you already are an expat, or you already are an immigrant, you probably know exactly what I mean, and you've probably learned the hard way. And if you're not one yet and you're considering becoming one, and if you do become one in the near future, this video probably won't help you avoid these mishaps, but at least you'll know that you're not alone, because I think we all learn some things the hard way. So for example, when we first moved to Uruguay, and we applied for our residency, we were super excited because we got it in 17 days and we were super North American about getting everything done fast and efficiently and being done with it. And then we found out that we couldn't leave the country until we got our permanent card. And I was like, well, how long does that take? I didn't know that. Nobody told me this. And it almost felt like, oh my gosh, I'm trapped here for 6 to 12 months. And why would nobody tell me that? Well, they didn't know that I didn't know. And some countries like Uruguay, for example, are really hard to find information, especially out of Spanish, but even in Spanish, even if you know Spanish and read Spanish, it is still hard to get some of the information that you might need to know. And it kind of makes sense from my perspective now because, for example, I was born in the US, and when I grew up, I was taught this is how you buy a car, this is how you buy a house, this is how you rent a house. If you need to look for a house, there's then the MLS, and you can go look for all the houses that are listed in your area for rent or for sale. There's just certain ways that things happen. And so when you move to another country, for some reason we expect that those things that are common knowledge to us will still exist in the next country, and they don't. And everybody that's from that country, the way that it works in their country, they think that it's common knowledge for how it works there, and they have no idea that you don't know how to do it. So when a lot of North Americans move to Uruguay, for example, or Argentina, for example, and they need to buy a house or they need to rent a house, they're like, where do I look to find this? And maybe they contact a realtor because they think that a realtor clearly has access to every house on the market, but that's not the case. There's no group MLS. There are websites like Mercado Libre or Infocasas or things like that where you can find houses, but it's not, if you go to a realtor, they show you what they have. So it's not all connected like what we are used to in the US with like Zillow, or I don't even remember all the websites at this point, but they're all connected, and a realtor can pull up everything on the market and tell you everything about it, take you to look at it. The process is just much different. Another thing that I was thinking of this morning is when we wanted to buy a car in Uruguay. Well, we already had a car that we'd bought originally, but we needed a bigger family car, so we were going to buy one. So I went on Mercado Libre and I picked out this car that I really liked. It was at a dealership in Montevideo, which was about 2 hours away, so we had to drive there. I looked online to see what time this dealership was open. It was a fairly well-known used car dealership. It had a lot of cars, had a lot of good reviews, so I look up their hours. So we get in the car, we drive over after making sure that it was open, and we get there. Happens to be raining that day. So we go in, we look at the car, we're like, okay, we like this one and this one, we would like to test drive them. And they're like, well, we're not gonna test drive today because it's raining. And I was like, okay, well, can we just buy the car? And they were like, well, we don't wanna sell it on a rainy day. And we're looking at them like, we just drove 2 hours to get here. We have to drive 2 hours home. What do you mean you won't sell a car on a rainy day? I mean, I had no idea that I should have even called and asked what the weather was. I had no idea that there was certain weather requirements to purchase a vehicle. And so we left, and a couple days later, I checked the forecast. I texted them on WhatsApp. I'm like, is it raining there? Can we come? Can we buy a car? Can we do this and that? And they're like, yeah, you can come today. So we ended up going, and we were able to buy a car that day. It's just something that in my mind as a North American, a used car salesman would never say, I'm not gonna sell a car today because the weather is bad. Makes no sense to us, but that's something that happens. And another example would be in Argentina, you can't have a Mercado Libre account unless you have a local ID or an ID from the country. And nobody understands that because when they were born, they were born with their DNI in Argentina. And so they can obviously get an account. They have a bank account. They can transfer money. Like a big way to pay for things here is transferencia. So you just transfer from one account to the other account, which we were able to do easily when we lived in Uruguay because we had our card, we had our residency card, we had our bank account, we had all of those things. So we kind of also were used to the way that they did it. But in Argentina, when we first got to Argentina, and the kids' school said, okay, well, you need to buy these books. And because we were in a small town, we had to buy them on Mercado Libre. And I was like, was there any way else? Can somebody help me buy them? Is there any way to get them? And they're like, no, you just go on Mercado Libre and you buy it. And I'm like, I can't. I don't have a DNI. And everyone was just flabbergasted. They're like, what do you mean you can't get an account without a DNI? So it's just, they didn't know that we didn't know. I mean, there's so many examples. From one time when we first rented our house, they told us we had to put the bills in our name. So, you know, all this stuff is really hard when you don't speak the language. Everyone's like, oh, just call them up or just go to the office. And it's like, thank you so much for that helpful tip. Let me just call someone up in a language that I don't speak, and let me just go to the office and speak to someone in a language that I don't speak, and let's see how well I do. So it's a struggle, even when they tell you the step that you have to take, but they said, okay, for example, go to, you know, the electricity company. So if I Google map it, I go to the electricity company, I take a little number, because you have to wait till they call your number, and if you just wait in a line, they're gonna start calling numbers, and then you're gonna have to get in the back of it because you don't have a number. So you need a number if you're gonna move to South America. At least Uruguay and Argentina and Bolivia, they had numbers. I think Brazil, they did too. I'm not sure. But anyway, so you take your number and then you wait. And then you go up there and they needed all this information that I didn't have. So I have to, you know, leave and come back and do it again. Finally get all the information, put the bills into my name. And when we finished our contract, I asked my realtor, I said, what do I need to do about the bills? Do I go back and take it out of my name? And they're like, no, the next person puts it in their name. Oh, okay, great. Perfect. Thank you. That's great. So I didn't think about it again until about a year later, when the company contacted me through my phone and said I had a $1,200 US dollar bill because they had never taken it. Nobody had ever changed it over. They didn't rent it again and never got taken out of my name. So I call my local friends and I'm like, hey, what do I do about this bill? And they're like, well, you have to take it out of your name. I'm like, well, I asked the realtor and this is what they told me. And so I go to the company, I explain what happened. They're like, sorry, maybe you can get the owner to pay the bill for you, or else you're gonna have to pay it and then we'll take it out of your name. And it's like, well, I don't owe $1,200 because I haven't lived there. I have proof that I haven't lived there. I don't have a contract there anymore. They're like, well, you just have to take it out of your name. Okay, so I go to the realtor, I argue with them. They're like, well, you should have taken it out of your name. And I'm like, here's the text where you told me that I didn't have to take it out of my name. So in the end, I got stuck with this $1,200 electricity bill because I just didn't know. And there's been example after example after example of I just didn't know and nobody told me because either they were a jerk, but more often than that, they just had no idea that I didn't know. So I wanted to make this video because I wanted to let everybody know that comes across this, that when you move to another country, you have to like quadruple check everything. If you don't know something, you ask, and then you ask someone else, and then you ask someone else, and then you probably ask a lawyer or an escribana or somebody, or maybe two lawyers or two escribanas if it's something really big. And if it's a contract, you want to have multiple people look over it. If this is not your native language or it's not your native country, have everybody look over it, because the odds are against us as expats because we just don't know. It's not that we're not smart. We're probably super capable in our own country and in our own language. But if we don't know, there's nothing that we can do about it. We just don't know. And so many of my friends that are expats and immigrants have really gotten the short end of the stick on this because they just didn't know. From lawsuits to losing sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then once you know, and you know how it works. So my super important suggestion is ask and ask and ask and ask again, and then get multiple professionals and ask them as well. So hopefully this is helpful. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it ends up funny. Like buying the car in the rain, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so Uruguay, and we laugh about it. Yeah, we drove, 2 hours, then 4 more hours again to get the car, but it wasn't a big deal. Like we didn't lose, a lot of money, or we didn't get sued, or, nothing bad happened. It was funny. But other times, it's really unfortunate and it's really unfair, and again, if you don't know, you don't know. So anyway, if you are an expat and you come across this video and you have stories of that exact same thing happening to you, I would love to hear about it. So just put it in the comments. Okay, bye.